sbagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol! Grosso, gol di Grosso, manca un minuto, gol di Grosso.
Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host Shamik Paul, and on today's agenda is the 1-1 draw with Fiorentina. After putting in a huge shift in midweek in the win over Inter in the Coppa Italia, Milan battles hard to take a point home from Florence thanks to a Calhanoglu equaliser, which cancelled out Giovanni Simeone's opener. Looking at the positives to start with, I think Gattuso has mentioned it a couple of times in recent weeks in terms of how we don't react well to a setback. We've fallen behind in games. Not only have we not fought back to take anything from those games, but we've also not even looked like threatening to do so. So from that point of view, to go behind, to hit back immediately afterwards, that is something that he wanted to see from the players, and that's exactly what he got on Saturday. So I'm sure he'll take that away as a positive. Negatives, I think there was a real lack of fluidity to the performance. I don't think we've matched the intensity, the desire, the commitment and determination that we showed in midweek against Inter, which is pretty understandable considering we played 120 minutes of football only a few nights before that. And so I think Gattuso even mentioned in his press conference on Friday that the players were tired in training. So I think this was the best effort that we could have hoped for from the players, and to come away with a point in a difficult place to go to, Fiorentina, very difficult to break down. I think we can see it as a positive result, but obviously there's a sense of disappointment that we didn't get the 3 points. So overall, happy with the point, end to the year, and we move forwards. Manager rating out of 10 first. Gattuso's changes making the difference again. He brought on Calhanoglu, obviously came on and got the equaliser. I thought Silva came on and linked up well with the Turkish international quite well as well. Locatelli, in my opinion, should have had more playing time. I would have liked to have seen that. But ultimately, the changes did make the difference. They got us back into the game, made us look a bit more of a threat in the closing stages. So on that front, you've got to look at it as a positive and say Gattuso did a great job there. On the negative side of things, and the reason why I've downmarked him to a 6 is because of his persistence with starting Riccardo Montolivo in midfield. We'll get to Montolivo's performance shortly, but also the indecision to play Borini on the left wing. Again, we'll go into depth on his performance when I get to his player rating, but I do feel Gattuso's got to take the responsibility of that, where Borini simply isn't good enough to play in that role. So it's on the coach to take him away from that, play him in a position where we can utilise his sort of tireless running and work ethic, make the most of his qualities, and kind of hide the negatives to his game, which is a very, very obvious lack of quality in an attacking sense. So 6 out of 10 for Gattuso. On to the player ratings. I've given Gianluigi Donnarumma a 7. Made his 100th appearance for Milan. Spoke after the game very well, said it was an honour, thanked everyone for those who were involved getting him to that stage, and also cleared up his future, saying that he's got a 4-year contract, he's happy where he is. So everything's good. Hopefully we'll see less boos in the new year for him when he goes back to the San Siro. But ultimately, in terms of his performance on the pitch, 3 great saves, really important saves throughout the game. Left exposed on the goal. Don't think he could have done much to save that header, but otherwise really decisive performance and really impressive. So 7 out of 10 for Donnarumma. Calabria gets a 6. I think he always puts in a really decent shift defensively. You know what you get from him. He is always going to give best. However, I do feel as though he needs to add more quality to his game. In the modern day game, you know, you look around the top European leagues and the fullbacks are so crucial, not only defensively but going forward. I feel Calabria does decent in terms of his defensive duties, but going forward, whether it's his delivery in the box, whether it's his overall just influence on the game, I don't feel he does enough. So it'll come with age, it'll come with maturity and experience, I'm sure, but for now I'd just like to see that bit more confidence to go out there and do more. But a solid performance nevertheless, I think, and it was a 6 for him. Leonardo Bonucci gets a 5. Really shaky performance from the captain, guilty of the decisive mistake in losing Simeone for the goal. I don't know where his marking went. I don't know whether he was expecting Romagnoli to pick him up behind him, but ultimately for me that was Bonucci's responsibility and he failed on that instance. So exposed on other occasions as well. Didn't feel he was at his best defensively. He looked shaky at times against Inter, so hopefully this isn't a trend that's emerging that we saw earlier in the season as well. But disappointing performance from him, so I've given him a 5 out of 10. Alessio Romagnoli also gets a 5 out of 10. I think he made a real mess of the incident that led to his booking, gave the ball away initially. I don't know whether you can look at Montolivo in that instance as well, but it was Romagnoli's poor pass. Bonucci made the mistake, which obviously let in Simeone. Romagnoli brought him down. Some might have said that he deserved a red. I thought a yellow card was fair, but it was really sloppy on the ball, really rash challenge from him, so that was a very risky situation for him. However, aside from that, I thought he was relatively solid. It was a little bit of a drop-off from his recent performances. I've singled him out for praise against Inter. I thought he was immense in that game. I think he was a little below standard there, so that's why I've given him a 5 on this occasion. Ricardo Rodriguez gets a 6 out of 10, similar to Calabria in the sense that he does his defensive work really well, kept things tight on the left flank. He had a lot to do, but he did it well. But just in terms of going forward, I'd just like to see more from him. I feel like we had that from him earlier in the season, but he's gone away from that. Whether it's a case of a lack of confidence, whether it's a lack of options, ultimately he is predominantly looking in the box and seeing Cutrone on his own. So can we really blame him for checking back all the time and playing a simple pass? You could argue on that side of things, but we do want to see more from him, whether it's taking on his man, crossing the ball into the box early on, just doing more in an attacking sense. I think we need to see that from him, so I'm giving him a 6 out of 10 on this occasion. Frank Kessie gets a 5 out of 10. I thought he was amazing against Inter, really great performance, but this was a real drop-off from him, and I'm going to put this one down to tiredness. I don't feel he didn't really impose himself on the game as he normally does. He wasn't really physical. He was really sloppy on the ball, continuously gave the ball away, and that's a real sort of problem with his performance. I've picked up on it in the previous podcasts in terms of his lack of composure and quality in attacking positions where he gets into dangerous situations. He just hasn't got the end product. I felt like he was just all at sea on this one, whereas he was trying to play passes in midfield and they weren't coming off. Really disappointing performance from him. Ricardo Montolivo gets a 5 out of 10. I did see Milan News give him a 7, I think it was. I don't know whether it's me watching a different game, whether it's them watching a different game. I thought he was poor. That's why I've given him a 5. Rarely plays the ball forward. It's becoming a simple case of too many backwards passing, too many simple sideways passes. Didn't really do much in terms of setting the tempo and getting a foothold in the game to kind of give us that platform in midfield. I felt like he was decent for a spell when he first came back into the team. He did impress me, silenced me for sure, but at this point he doesn't assert himself in games. I don't think he does much apart from float around and sort of kind of marshal other people to do things and tell everyone to calm down. I don't think he does great things across the game in general, to be quite honest with you. So for me, the sooner that he gets replaced in the team, whether it's Biglia, whether it's Locatelli, obviously for me Locatelli would get the nods, but for me Montolivo's overstayed his welcome in the team, and that's why I've given him a 5 out of 10. Giacomo Bonaventura also gets a 5 out of 10. I think he did a decent job. He was tidy in possession. He did try and get on the ball and make things happen. But again, it was just one of those cases where I felt like he was just fatigued. He didn't look as sharp and as fresh as he normally does. So that's why I've given him a 5 out of 10, because I don't think he did enough to trouble the Fiorentina defence. And given his position in the team, we desperately need that from him. So I've given him a 5, which was a little bit disappointing. Suso gets a 6. Don't think it was one of his best performances, not by a long shot, but it's the similar situation, similar story with the Spaniard. We always look for him to make something happen. He is our main creative spark, and there were times where he looked dangerous. There were other times where he frustrated. He took too long on the ball. He should have crossed earlier, but he did trouble Fiorentina. He had that shot that forced Sportiello into a good save, and obviously he had the shot that was saved and parried into Calhanoglu's path to get the equaliser. So a decisive enough performance from Suso to warrant a 6 out of 10, but I don't feel he did anything more to warrant a higher mark than that, so I've gone with a 6. Patrick Cutrone gets a 5 out of 10. This game, for me, arguably came back to the point of why I've always said that as annoying and as frustrating as Kalinic has been this season, I feel as though that position in the 4-3-3 system that we're deploying, it's going to be a nightmare for any player that plays in that role. We saw it with Cutrone today. I felt like he was isolated too often. He struggled to get involved in play. You can point the finger at him for that as well. You can say that he should have dropped back further and kind of try to link up play better rather than running around too much like a headless chicken. But I think going up against two solid centre-halves, it was always going to be a difficult task for him. I felt like he did impose himself well at times. I think he made a nuisance of himself, put himself about as he always does, but not enough really trouble the Fiorentina defence enough. So I've given him a 5 out of 10. Fabio Borini, unfortunately, gets a 4 out of 10, the lowest mark of the lot. And again, I'll come back to the point of involving Gattuso. I don't think we can entirely blame Borini for this. I think he's just not good enough to be played in an attacking role. We saw it, Montella tried it. I know we've got a lack of options. but Montella tried it, Gattuso's tried it, doesn't work. We can praise his work ethic, his tireless running, his determination and commitment as much as we like. He has not got the qualities in an attacking role to be effective for Milan in the final third. Whether it's taking on his man and failing, whether it's picking up possession and losing it, he just didn't do anything to warrant, a starting role in that position, which is absolutely key to kind of complement what Suso offers on the other flank. So for me, Barini, really poor performance, and I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10, but Gattuso also deserves some criticism there. Substitutes, a bit more of a positive picture. I've given Hakan Çalhanoğlu a 7, bagged his 3rd Serie A goal of the season and got a point for the team. Hopefully, I think this now really makes a strong argument for him to start. I think he needs to come back into the starting lineup. He's impressed off the bench now a couple of times. He was good against Inter. He was good against this game as well. And for me, I think you can tell straight away, as soon as he comes on the pitch, we're a better attacking threat. We lack the creativeness, the sort of inventiveness that he possesses. I don't think he's, playing at peak Çalhanoğlu levels. I think there's much more to come from him, but you can see the fitness improving, you can see the confidence growing, and I think he deserves now a shot in the starting lineup. So 7 out of 10 for Hakan. Andre Silva gets a 6 out of 10. Felt like there was plenty of running, a lot of movement off the ball from him, and very interestingly, and something that I was really happy to see was his link-up play with Çalhanoğlu. I think they kind of built up a little bit of chemistry in this game, perhaps. There were certain times where he was making runs off the ball. Hakan was playing the ball early, getting him into the channels. That's exactly what we want to see from those two. So again, similarly to Çalhanoğlu, I'd love to see those two in the starting lineup sooner rather than later, giving them a real go, rather than just chucking them on for the last 20 minutes or so, where, in fairness, Gattuso is working for him, but I feel like they would deserve to be starting now. So hopefully we see that from those two. And then finally, Locatelli, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't get a rating, of course, but as I mentioned, just disappointing that he only had 2 minutes on the pitch. I felt like he should have come on much earlier. Montalivo was just disappointing for me. I wish Locatelli could have played that regista role, and it was just kind of pointless to kind of bring him on for 2 minutes where it was didn't have any time to even touch the ball or get involved. So on that front, hopefully we can see some changes coming. Maybe, I don't know if this is another indication to Gattuso that Montalivo is not going to work long term, so we need to change that. And Barini especially, it's got to be the final message to Gattuso that simply does not work, and he has to change that for the next game. So we shall see if that happens, but I won't hold my breath because we've been hoping for that for a number of games now, and it simply hasn't happened. So all in all, a positive sort of result, I would say. I think it's a difficult place to go to get a point. I read that something Fiorentina haven't conceded in 500 minutes of football in Serie A, so very difficult team to break down. So glad we got the point, got back in the game. And we wrap up 2017 with a draw. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can follow that up with a win against Crotone next weekend. Got Cagliari after that, a couple of weeks break in between. So yeah, let's hopefully, we kind of made the point that whether the Inter game was going to be a catalyst to kickstart our season, kind of lost that momentum a little bit against Fiorentina, I believe, but it was a good result, good point, and fingers crossed we can move forward from there. Guys, I'll be back next week for the Crotone game. You can follow me in the meantime at AC Milan Talk 1 on Twitter and Facebook, or you can follow my personal account at SP_Calcio on Twitter. But until that Crotone game, speak to you soon.